This is episode 17 of the Joyful Movement Show, and today I'm joined by another special guest. Dr. Maggie Landis is a medical doctor and nutritionist, and she's got some really interesting views on weight, health, and dieting. I loved this interview, and I think you will too. Stay tuned. Hi there. Welcome to the Joyful Movement Show. I'm your host, Kim Hagel, mom, recovering dieter, and founder of Radiant Vitality Wellness. As a personal trainer with my own story of body acceptance, I've seen firsthand how diet culture influences the fitness industry and the damage it causes the women I work with, keeping them on the start-stop cycle, struggling to find motivation. It's now my mission to empower women to break free from torturous exercise, restrictive eating, and body shame. Stick with me and I'll help you discover what moves you so that you can tap into that burning motivation deep inside yourself and experience joyful movement, peace with food, and feel confident in your own skin. Are you ready? Let's lace up our runners, pop the earbuds in, and go for a walk while we chat. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Joyful Movement Show. It's Kim here, and if you're new, I'm a personal trainer and registered holistic nutritionist on a mission to help women unlearn everything they've been taught about exercise and food so that they can figure out what moves them and get unstuck and finally feel confident and at peace in their own skin. I am really excited about this episode. I've been looking forward to this conversation with our guest for a long time. Maggie Landis is a medical doctor and a public health nutritionist from Texas, and we connected a while back after she came across my podcast. We started chatting and quickly realized we have so much in common, both in our personal lives and our history with dieting and in our professional journey. I consider Maggie a kindred spirit, and I know you're going to love her too. I invited Maggie on here today because in my work as a personal trainer and nutritionist, the main goal I hear from my clients is to lose weight. And when I question them as to the reason behind that desire to lose weight, the most common answer I hear is to be healthy, of course. Of course, we all want to be the healthiest we possibly can be, and it's a commonly held belief that thin is equated with being healthy. Having a high BMI has been linked with diseases such as heart attack, stroke, diabetes, cancer, and more. However, it is a myth that having a high BMI causes these things. Now, Maggie is one smart cookie, and as a doctor and nutritionist who has done the research, I felt like she was the perfect person to come on here and chat with us about this whole topic. I asked Maggie to share some research and stats about how BMI in and of itself is not the best indicator of health. And what I learned from Maggie is that our weight loss and dieting attempts actually increase our risk and lead to worse health outcomes than just weight alone. Maggie's going to explain her undieted approach to eating and how chasing health at every size is possible. She also discusses body image and weight stigma with practical strategies to help you self-advocate. So before we jump into the interview, allow me to formally introduce our guest. Maggie Landis is a board-certified physician, public health nutritionist, and anti-diet wellness expert. She created her signature Get Eat-Fluenced coaching program to help women who are exasperated with chronic dieting be able to fix their food overwhelm and live a full and unrestricted life, pursuing their personal passions without the distraction of rigid eating behavior. She is also the creator and host of the Eatfluencer podcast, where she and her guests dig into the mindset work required to construct a healthy, complete, and high-quality life unlimited by the oppression of diet culture. So without any further ado, let's hear from Maggie. Well, Maggie, welcome to the Joyful Movement Show. I am so excited to have you here today. This has been a conversation I've been looking forward to for a while. I think that you bring a really refreshing perspective on health and weight and nutrition that we don't often see in the mainstream, at all, but particularly from a medical doctor. So I am really excited to see where this conversation goes today, and welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope that your listeners enjoy it, because it is a little countercultural to my profession to be talking about the things that we're going to go into today. So
Yeah.
Appreciate you having me.
Oh, no trouble. It is kind of countercultural, I would agree. So I'm curious, how did you end up doing what you're doing? How does a medical doctor completely overhaul their whole practice and get interested in nutrition?
Well, so the short version, as it is with many people in their profession, they have a major life event that sort of changes their trajectory sometimes.
Mm,
And I actually was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 40. I had
mm,
lymphoma, and I'm in remission. I'm doing great. But what happened during that experience? So I've always been a foodie. I've always liked the sort of idea of food and nutrition. I guess it's been part of my life, but I really, really started studying it at that point, like in an
mhm,
academic sense, like
mm,
like actually reading articles, going to meetings, like not just reading what's in, on the headline or in the internet or whatever. And in doing that, I realized that so much of what I was telling people, like really as an authority, telling
mhm,
people, patients, and even personal friends and stuff, was not a whole lot better than hearsay, to be honest. And
mm.
I hate even saying that, but we get so little nutrition education in
Uh,
our medical training, which may be a surprise to your listeners that
mhm.
um, it is slowly starting to change. But I went to medical school 20 years ago, and we basically got almost zero. And
Really?
yeah, so in doing this sort of personal investigation, I thought, wow, there is so much more science out there that I don't even know. I
Hmm.
need to like really learn more. So
Yeah.
I applied to grad school, and I'm almost about to get my master's in public health nutrition. And
Wow.
here's the shocker of all that
Mhm.
is, I went to grad school 20 years after going to medical school. And guess what? The information is the same. Like, I kid you
Really?
not, that I
Huh.
have textbooks right here sitting on my desk that were printed in 2018 that have the food pyramid in there. I mean,
Oh,
that is,
really?
yeah. So it was then so then it became not just an interest, then it was like a mission, because I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh no, 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 no. We cannot, the thing to me is that we understand that science evolves, right? I mean, we like,
Yes.
they don't put the same like materials in space flight that they did 20 years ago. We don't use the same antibiotics. Everything changes, but for some reason, we as a culture have sort of assumed that nutrition, like whatever we said was the rule in
Mhm.
1960, is like just permanent, and
Yeah.
it's not allowed to evolve. There's not any refreshing of the information, and so this cultural narrative just persists. So
Yeah.
that's where I really got my mission. So I have this education, but what I'm teaching didn't really come from the education. It came from what is not in the education, if that makes sort of sense.
It totally does. And if I can um, jump in, I guess what I'm seeing you teach is an undieted approach to nutrition.
Right.
So is that what you're referring to? Is that what you're not learning in your education? And what prompted you to take on this undieted approach?
Well, really for me, and I'm somebody who just, I'll believe things when I see the evidence for it, and when I started seeing all this evidence, like really reading, you have to go to the source. You can't just take I mean, the diet industry is a business model. It's not a healthcare model. And so you have to you
Mhm,
get past that, and you
mhm,
start really reading the science, and the science does not support weight loss diets for long-term health. It does not
mhm,
show that it really improves health, that it reduces your risk of death, that it does anything, really beneficial in the long run, which is what we're trying to do, is be healthy for the long run. We're not trying to fit into our genes in 2 weeks, and so I really relied so much on that, learning about the science of it. And I do, the misnomer, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, but the,
oh,
the
sure.
misnomer is that weight is intimately tied to health, and
Yeah.
that if you are at a high weight, you are not healthy. If you are at a low weight, you are healthy. And that's just simply not fact.
Yeah, I really wanted, sorry to cut you off there, but I
Yeah,
really did
no.
want to dive into that one today because that's what I see all the time in my industry. As a personal trainer, most of the clients who knock on my door will come to me with a weight loss goal.
Right.
And being the person that I am, of course, I'm going to dig underneath that and find out what's the why behind this desire to lose weight. And almost every single time there's a belief that, well, that's what I have to do. That's what it takes to be healthy. You know, if I don't want to develop heart disease or diabetes or cancer or all of the other big things that people get, I have to lose weight.
Right. Well, and your clients, I'm sure, ask you that. And I hate to admit it, but probably 9 out of 10 of them got that belief from their medical providers or from what they perceive to be, like good quality advice.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and the other thing that's really important in a sort of scientific sense is to understand correlation and causation. And I've even heard you speak about this before, that just because two things occur and you see them happening at the same time doesn't mean that one caused the other. And that's really important to know.
Yes.
And so, could it possibly be that there's something that causes strokes or heart attacks or diabetes besides the weight? Okay. I would say, well, yes, because if it was only the weight, then every single large person should have those diseases and it should never occur in small people, right?
Right. And that's not the case.
Well, that's not the case. Of course, that's not the case. So so there's got to be something else. And I would say that something else is actually even most of the reason. So, and the problem is that the medical sort of standard is to focus on weight. And I mean, I don't know how it is when you go to your doctor, but I go to my doctor and they weigh you like in the hallway before you've even got to the room. It doesn't matter if you're there for a sinus infection, you still get your weight taken. Mm-hmm. It's just a weight centered model.
That brings up an interesting point, because I hear that often from my clients or my friends who are in a larger body, but my weight normative BMI friends don't always have the same experience of being weighed when they go in for a sinus infection. Can you speak at all to that?
Well, there's a lot of weight bias in the medical profession, and I'm not. Let me just be clear that I'm not throwing doctors or nurses or anybody under the bus,
our goal here at all.
Part of the problem is they don't get any training in this stuff. I mean, and so they're kind of winging it. And so a lot of the advice they're giving is honestly their personal belief system, and a belief system that was constructed from them being people living in our society and our diet culture. Yeah. So the line between their personal beliefs and their professional advice is blurred. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of, if you go to a doctor in a large body, frequently weight loss is the number one answer to whatever the problem is, whether it's knee pain, depression, migraines, reflux, whatever blah, blah problem you have. Mm-hmm. That becomes the reflex answer. And that's a really challenging place for patients, because when they feel, stigmatized like that, they're looking at their doctor as a person of authority, and it's uncomfortable to sort of open that conversation and, frankly, kind of confront the doctor and say, mm-hmm. Okay, I hear what you're saying. What would be the treatment for, here's a technique. Let me give your listeners like a tip. Yes, so here's a way that you can sort of navigate this conversation. If you feel like the visit is becoming way more focused on your weight than the problem at hand, which mm-hmm. may be, let's just say migraine for an example. Yes. So, you could say, I hear what you're saying, and I'm wondering what other recommendations you would have. For example, if somebody came to you in a lean body and had migraines, what would you be recommending they do?
Absolutely.
And so, okay. Well, they're not going to say nothing. It's not that somebody with a thin person with migraine shows up and the doctor says, I have no idea. I thought it was only people that are fat. I mean, it's, it's nonsensical when you say it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's one way to do it. The other thing you can do, to kind of take ownership of it is you can first of all, you can decline being weighed. There are only a few medical conditions that really require a weight. I mean, if you're getting chemotherapy or you're on dialysis or something, then it is
medications
required
measured
to monitor. Exactly. But if you're there for a rash or you're there for a sinus infection, it has nothing to do with that appointment. Yeah. And you can decline to be weighed. You can also do a blind weight, which would be like you turn around backwards and the care team sees your weight and records it because they are compelled to do so, but you don't need to be triggered by that and obsess about it if you're trying to get out of that headspace.
I love those ideas.
Yeah.
Let's go back to talking about this undieted approach just for a second, because another thing I hear often in my industry is most women I meet don't identify as dieters. And yet there's a pattern of restriction, like maybe they don't eat after 6 p.m., or maybe they only have carbs if they're having it with a protein, or maybe they limit carbs altogether. Like, can you talk to me a little bit about the difference between dieting and what the undieted approach really is all about?
Yes, I'm glad you bring that up, because that is a major, and my coaching clients and my personal friends say the same thing too, that, well, I'm not dieting. I quit, fill in the blank, keto, Weight Watchers, whatever it is. Okay, well, that's fine. Stopping an actual diet program is like a low-hanging fruit. That would be like the first step. But if you are eating based on a set of rules that were sort of given to you either by another person, by something you read, by something you heard, by something you assumed to be true, that's dieting. That's diet behavior. And so, and this is a transition. I'm not under any delusion that you can like live in this sort of restrictive eating for decades, like most of us have, and then all of a sudden just be like, okay, tomorrow I have no rules,
Yeah.
But you have to realize why. And that the most important question to ask yourself is why. Okay. Like when somebody says, well, I don't eat after 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever. Why? Exactly. Now, if they say, well, because, I've noticed that when I eat late in the evening, I get kind of bloated and I don't sleep as soundly. Okay. Now that's something coming from inside of you. Then you set that up because it feels better to you to not eat late in the evening. All right. But then it's not such a rigid rule. It's like, okay, well, dinner was served at 6:15 instead of 5:45. It's okay. We can have some flexibility if that's the reason we're doing it. But if the reason why is because you heard that your body gains more weight at night and you're not allowed to, that's different. It's all about the motivation. It's really, and I know motivation is your big, your big platform, but it's why you're doing something. Like I'm not against or for any specific way of eating. It's, people come to me and they say, well, am I allowed to be a vegan? And I'm like, well, you're allowed to do whatever you want. And if you're a vegan because you believe in animal activism, then that's a totally different conversation than you heard that vegans are thin or something. Like, so you have to really ask yourself, that's the first step, is to be like, why am I making this decision? What do I hope to gain by making this decision? What is the feeling I'm looking for by making this decision?
I always say to my people, are you trying to fix something about yourself, or are you trying to grow and be the best version of yourself?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's
that often those restrictions come from a place of needing to fix. And even if the person doesn't seem to be motivated by weight loss, there's still that, well, I must eat this way to be healthy. Like, can you talk a little bit about how restriction and this dieting, whether they identify as dieters or not, isn't actually leading to improved health outcomes?
Right. Well, so the thing about restricting, and whether that's restricting, like literally, I do not permit myself to eat certain things or certain food groups, or there's this sort of psychological restriction where you might eat, I don't know, fried food, but you only allow yourself it, one day a week or whatever your rule set is,
your cheat day or
so it's restricting. It is restricting. The thing is that the stress of the restriction, there's a couple aspects to it, but the one that's the most sort of easy to explain is that your body is constantly regulating itself. Like literally second by second, there are hormones and neurotransmitters and all sorts of things that are way beyond the scope of what we need to explain. But the stress of the restriction increases the inflammatory response and the stress response in your body. It's not just your brain being stressed about what you're not allowed to eat or what you're wishing you could have.
Mhm.
Your adrenaline level goes up, your cortisol level goes up, your blood sugar goes up as a physical
Ah,
response to the emotional stress.
I
All
see.
right. And so if you, I mean, doing that for lunch one day is not going to give you a heart attack, but
Uh-huh.
if we are in a situation where every single food decision we make is stressful,
Yeah.
then we are basically bathing our bodies, our organs in all this stress environment,
Uh-huh.
which is some of the reason that we hold on to weight, we become insulin resistant, that all these things that we're trying to avoid by restricting,
Yeah.
we're causing by restricting.
Huh. That's so
So yeah, and then what happens? So then you get real frustrated. So then
Mhm.
doing all this, but the weight's not coming off, or your blood pressure's not going down, or whatever. So then now we go into the judgment where now we're mad at ourselves, we're disappointed, we're frustrated, which increases our stress response.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not gonna,
Vicious cycle.
yeah, exactly. And so then you feel like your response to that is more restriction.
Yeah.
It must be me. I must not be doing it enough. So I need to
Mhm.
diet more or
Yeah.
restrict more. And so only way to it's a negative feedback loop. The only way to sort of break that is to literally stop restricting, which sounds so weird. And
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird coming out of my mouth as a doctor, because every doctor that your listeners have talked to has told them to go on a diet for the last 50 years.
Mhm.
But when you stop restricting, the experience of eating doesn't provoke that stress response.
Right.
And you just kind of become tuned in to what your body needs. And that the fear usually in my clients is they're afraid they're going to just go crazy. They honestly don't trust themselves. And they say, if
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have a set of rules, I'll just go,
Yeah.
plow through my kitchen and there'll be no, well, you won't. I promise you,
Maybe
you won't.
initially, but not
Yeah.
forever. Right?
No, because that doesn't feel good. I
No.
mean, there's your body honestly knows what it needs. It
Yeah.
really does. Your body doesn't have a feeling about food. It knows how to maintain your health. It is trying to survive no matter whether you believe it or not, or you understand it or not. We wouldn't survive as a species if our body didn't have like a mechanism to
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah.
So the to let the body just kind of do what it's going to do and not try to layer so much control on top of it
Mhm.
is much more favorable, not only for it's just fun. It's more fun
Yes.
every time you're eating or thinking about eating. It's not like stressful and anxiety provoking,
Yeah.
but it's actually more favorable for your physiology.
Yeah.
And it's the same. I know you talk about the joyful movement. That's the difference in moving your body because it feels good to gain flexibility or strength versus I have
Have
to
to
because
do
my
it.
Apple Watch told me to go to the gym or
Exactly.
whatever. So
Exactly.
it's the same with the eating. It's the motivation behind it that
Mhm.
makes it a pleasurable or unpleasurable experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is what makes it sustainable or not, you know.
Yeah. Now, I know that can seem like a big switch to flick, right? When we've spent our whole life on the restriction cycle. And like you say, there's that fear of like, I'm not going to be able to do it on my own. I've always followed a plan. I don't trust myself. I hear that a lot from my clients as well.
Yes.
So, what do you say is the first step when someone's thinking about giving up dieting? Where do they start?
Well, the first thing is to assess what you're doing now. Assess that, to sort of have an awareness of what you're doing. And I like to start with people just like, okay, do whatever you're doing now. Don't even change
Mhm.
anything, but I want you to start becoming aware of why you're doing it.
Ah,
And awareness means literally like you need to do the work, like you write it down. I'm big into writing. So,
mhm.
writing it down or verbalizing it to somebody that's an accountability partner or something. Because we're too busy. If we are going to think it, we won't think it. We'll just be busy. But, what do you like every time when you go make a plate and you're going to serve yourself dinner? What are you thinking when you put this on the plate? Are you thinking, wow, I like spinach. This looks really good. I love garlic. Or are you thinking, is this a half a cup? I need a half a cup. Is this filling up a quarter of the plate? What are you thinking?
Right.
And I'm not saying to cut back or increase your spinach content just yet. I'm just saying, think about what you're doing. Yeah. Just so you need to be a little more objective about it, I guess. And then, the starting to remove some of those rules. So once you see what the rules are, you got to see what rules you're playing by in your own head.
Yeah.
And then you can start figuring out where did they come from and whether they're valid to be concerned about or not. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so, if you're a diabetic and you really do need to eat a certain amount of carbs because of your insulin or whatever, then you might actually need to have a rule. Okay. But that's a different reason than just some made up rule that, I heard that bananas are fattening or whatever you heard, so, to assess where you're at and what the reason is. And I think most people, shy of having a medical condition, they go through that rule list and they realize they have no idea. They were just told, maybe they were told when they were a child that something is bad for you, and they're 45 years old and they're still repeating it to themselves.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of sort of like aha moments in realizing, okay, so first we're going to let go of all the things that are just not even true. We can that's easy, right? The ones that aren't even factual. Then you start adding stuff that you like. And people, I have clients that tell me, they're like, once I took the rules away, I honestly don't even know what I like to eat. Like I honestly have made my food choices based on rules to the point where I don't even know what to order at the restaurant if everything on the menu is a choice for me. So it's sort of, then it gets to be kind of fun, because then you have this sort of learning sort of curiosity. You have to approach it with like curiosity, and is this something that feels good in my body? Is this something that I like to prepare? Is this something that's available to me? All these things play into it, but you're doing it out of interest in doing it. Not some, and so it puts the fun back in it, and then you start, you eventually need to sort of learn a little bit about nutrition. But like I said, that's like, we don't even talk about nutrition, like the actual nutrition, till like way, way later, because you get too distracted. Because if I start telling you about how much vitamin C is in a carrot or whatever, like if you're one of those people that's been tracking and monitoring and doing this math problem forever, you will latch on to that kind of data. Right. And I want to uncouple all that. So those are some good ways to start, but to not be judgmental about what you're doing. It's not your fault. Honestly, it's not anybody's fault. If you are between the age of 20 and 80 and you're listening to this podcast, you have grown up in a culture that has bred these thoughts in your brain and imprinted you to believe. The diet culture thinking is essentially that smaller is better, smaller is healthier, smaller is preferred. And particularly if you're a woman, you should be pursuing smaller. Yeah. Period. That's the message. Absolutely. So I'm not blaming anybody for thinking that, because that's what you've been told to think. But when we can start letting go of that and wrap that up and kind of hand it back, like that's not our belief system, that's somebody else's belief system. So let's just kind of put that to the back and then start seeing what we can do in our own life. We have control over this, and the one thing is, when you're saying stuff, to identify these rules, when you look for words, when you're talking to yourself, or even when you're talking out loud to your friends or something, that when you're saying, I should, I need to, I'm not allowed, like those are the key words for like, that's a rule. Yes. And so that's a good place to start when you're trying to sort of unpack this a little bit.
I love that. You touched on a lot of really important points there. Particularly about diet culture, and I often say to my people too, that just because a belief is commonly held in society doesn't make it true. Like I know we have all been taught under diet culture's rules, thin is better, thin is healthier, but just because most people believe that doesn't mean it's true. And you have the power to decide whether that belief, that thought serves you. Right. And then, everything you talked about with awareness, that's the precursor to change, becoming aware of how these rules are influencing your life and what they're creating as a result. you get to just look at that and decide, do I want to keep operating under this system? How is this helping me?
Right. And that's exactly right. And there's besides the, changing your thinking, the link I like to make is that when you change your thinking, you actually change your physiology. You
Yeah,
actually change your physical body because, that like I described, that whole stress hormone
cortisol. Yeah,
response, that's like a real thing. Like I didn't
for
invent
sure.
that. That's what happens in humans. So you can believe it or not, but that's what's happening when you hold
Hmm.
all these negative beliefs.
Yeah.
And so you have the capacity to really fix your problem. If your body doesn't feel good, you have a lot of mechanisms to fix that physical feeling with your mind.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
sounds crazy, but it's
It's
true.
true. It's true.
It's
I know.
true.
It's so empowering, right? Because once you realize that it's your thoughts that are behind a lot of your struggles, I mean, it can be kind of like, well, shoot, right? But at the same time, you have the ability to change your thoughts. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
very
That's
empowering.
the coolest thing is that we can change our beliefs about our self-image, about our body, about our health, and actually change those things. We
Mm.
have total autonomy and authority to do that.
Yeah.
And so I like to like really, give women their power back because we have subscribed to this really I don't know, what is disempowerment a word? Disempowerment,
Yeah.
unempowered, I don't know what the word is. But like somebody else has told us how to eat because they've told us that we don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And we basically said, okay, here's my Visa card,
Yeah.
sign me up for the next program, and
Exactly.
it's just, we've given our power away to this behemoth industry. But see, here's the really interesting part is that even the diet industry, they know we don't like dieting. They know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't even use the word diet anymore
Exactly.
themselves because it's so negative, has such a
Taboo. Yeah.
negative feeling. So
Yeah.
they've stolen, all the other words like wellness and health and lifestyle and all this
I
stuff.
find
But
even intuitive eating is being co-opted to be
yeah,
another way of dieting. Well, that's
oh,
a
that's just
conversation for
great.
another day, but yeah.
Yeah, no, they're because they know they have to. Like, what business model knows that they have such a bad product that they can't use the name of their product in their marketing? Who does that?
And you know what else I always think
What's
is funny is that we know, you and I know that 95% of diets or any form of restriction end up failing. What other product in the world could continue to thrive with a 95% failure rate?
right?
Who
Oh
else
yeah,
can
if
come
it yeah,
close?
it wouldn't. Well, if it was a product or a drug or something, it would never even come to market. It wouldn't pass the scrutiny of the regulatory bodies and stuff. So we are buying into a product that, and I don't know about Canada, the United States spends about 80 billion with a
It's the
B.
same here. It's the
Yeah,
same.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
So what if we put all those resources, all the money, time, energy, people resources that we are just subscribing to somebody else's belief system? What if we actually did something like
Yeah.
really cool with that? Think of
Wouldn't
what
that
women
be
could
fun?
achieve, right?
Wouldn't
So
that be
that's kind of my message is I'm like, we got to just get out of our own way and stop thinking that somebody else has control over our bodies and
fun?
are thinking about our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are put on this earth to do way bigger things than diet and try to shrink ourselves.
Oh yeah. It doesn't do any good. Honestly, it doesn't. When people and this is what I like to, and maybe you've used this analogy, but people will tell me, well, when I lose weight, usually it's lose
Mhm,
weight because let's just be honest, that's what everybody
mhm.
wants. When I lose weight, then I'll
Yeah,
be more energetic, then I'll be more confident, then I'll be more accepted or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, somebody else right now in a bigger body than you is looking at you and
mm,
saying that when they are like you, they're going to be
yeah,
all those things.
so true.
You're somebody else's like after. So let me just tell you that the shrinkage or growing of your body, whatever the body, it's not relevant. I mean, frankly. So let's just sort of like say what we really want is you want to
Mhm.
be courageous and loved and accepted and fill in the adjective. And then let's make some action items that get us to those things. Cause now we're actually like making progress
Yeah,
and stop obsessing about the size of our pants and stuff like that. Cause it's
exactly.
just so distracting and such a disservice to what we're capable of.
Exactly. I hear you. I'm right there. Amen, sister.
Yes, I know. I know. It's going to take all of us, Kim.
That's right. Changing the world little by little.
One anti-diet at a time.
Yeah. Oh, Maggie, you have given us lots to chew on today. Pun totally intended.
Totally intended.
I really, really appreciate you taking the time to educate my listeners. I learned a lot from this chat, so thank you for being here.
Well, absolutely. And there's a lot to this. I don't want anybody, if I can say one more thing to your listeners is don't be mad at yourself. Don't be disappointed that you sort of fell into this trap, if you want to look at it like that. We all did. This is our world. So that sort of shaming and stuff is just not productive. So it's okay. You can be angry at the diet culture. If you want to be angry at them, that's fine. You can write them a letter or whatever. But we gotta sort of be accountable for our actions moving forward. And just adopting a different mindset about eating and our bodies is really the first step. And you'll feel so much better. Like, it's amazing. And I'm sure you agree to this when you've made this transformation yourself. It's just like, wow, I just I'm capable of so much more than being neurotic about calories and
absolutely
and
very freeing
stuff. Yeah, exactly.
So Maggie, if my listeners want to stay in touch with you after this episode, as I'm sure they will, where can they find you?
Well, this is an easy one. My name is Maggie Landis, and so my handle on all of the social media is Maggie Landis MD, and that includes Instagram, Facebook. That's mostly where I am. I also have recently gotten into Clubhouse, if any of your listeners are in Clubhouse, and my website is maggielandismd.com. And then I also have a podcast called the Eatfluencer Podcast, where we talk about stuff like this every Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. It's a great podcast. I definitely recommend you all follow along. Well, once again, Maggie, thank you so much for being here. This was a great chat. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, friends, what did you think? Isn't she so refreshing? And that accent, I mean, I could listen to her all day. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, go show Maggie some love. Follow her on social media or visit her website. She has a free resource called The 5 Secrets to Stress-Free Social Eating that you can download. That might be really helpful. And also, a little sneak peek into what's to come. You get to hear more from Maggie down the line. I am working on a non-diet health summit that's taking place in April, where I'll be gathering experts from the non-diet field and bringing them together for one big online event to share their expertise about living the non-dieted way. And Maggie's going to be part of that. So look forward to information on how to register for that event. I'll keep you posted. Thanks for being here today, guys. I hope this message helped you. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaways, so feel free to send me a message or comment on any of the social media posts I put up about this episode. I got another guest for you coming next week. Ruth Montgomery of the Maven Project is coming to chat with us about how getting in touch with our inner child can help us heal our relationship to movement and food. It's going to be a really interesting chat. So until next week then, friends, thank you so much for being part of our community. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And remember that you can always connect with me on Instagram or Facebook, and you can learn more about how to work with me on my website, radiantvitality.ca. Be well, my friends. Here's to your radiant vitality. Hey, before you go, I just want to tell you how grateful I am for you. It means the world to me that you're part of our Radiant Vitality community. I've got a free gift for you. Head on over to my website and download The Motivation Secret, the simple mindset shift that will get you off the start-stop cycle for good. The link is in the show notes. And hey, if you enjoy this podcast, the greatest gift you could give me is to leave a review or share this episode with a friend. Your shares and reviews help move our show up the rankings on the podcast directories so that it can be seen by more women just like you who are ready for something different with fitness. Bye for now, friend.